Okay, what I want to talk to you about now is the role of education in employment, or how education affects your ability for employment or career paths or futures, etc. Now, we focus primarily on the idea of employment first. And even if you want to start your own venture, or even if you want to go out on your own in some way, shape, or form in the future, generally your early experiences have a huge impact on that. That is, an area where you can go out and satisfy the need or want of a customer or client is largely dependent on the knowledge and skills that you've already acquired. And lots of times when you even entrepreneurs will take on a role early that allows them to acquire some of this knowledge and skills. Now, is prior employment absolutely necessary to going out into the market on your own? No, it's not. But in many ways, it can help or facilitate those efforts. And it can certainly give you an understanding of a market that you primarily, that you may not have understood before, or the market that you primarily work in. You'll gain a more in-depth understanding of that. So let's move into how, for employment purposes, getting a job or getting started on a career path or track, what's the role of education in that? Well, as you can see on this chart, you're exponentially more likely to get a job if you have higher levels of education, and particularly within the business school. Business students generally tend to have a higher degree of employability or employment percentage higher than that of some of the other majors, and right up there with information technology or the healthcare industry. So with that in mind, education itself does lead to a higher degree of employment, and it generally leads to higher introductory salaries, and there's a strong correlation between the ultimate salary achieved, that is a level of salary at some given point in the future or at some age in your life or number of years in the workforce, versus those who have a lower or higher degree of education. So anyway, so understanding that your education level is going to have a huge effect on that. So now to the purpose of this video. Why? Why is education so important in employability, and why does it have such a relationship to how much you make? Well, anyone who has gone through school or varying levels of school understand that there are definitely skills that you acquire in school, but more broadly than that, it's a general, more broadly than the actual skills that you acquire. College itself is a signaling function to employers. Okay, with that in mind, now a technical school versus say a bachelor's degree school, a four-year institution, is going to have a different signaling function. So a technical school is going to be more focused on skill-based learning, and it's going to be more focused on demonstrating competency in a given task in that way. Now, as you noted from the slide, an individual with an associate's degree or a technical school degree typically has a lower salary point and a lower total career achieved earning potential than those who receive a four-year bachelor's degree. So again, why is this? Well, it comes down to the signaling function again of the four-year school or the bachelor's degree, where you may acquire actual skills in a technical school that are superior to, or the skills that you would not have learned in your bachelor's or 4 years degree, or at least commensurate with. But the signaling function of the bachelor's degree is this. It's a well-rounded degree. Generally, there's a large liberal arts component, history, science, philosophy, different things of that nature that introduce you to so many different aspects of life that are important to individuals. So what it does is introduce you to so much. It makes you generally, whether you realize it or not at the time, a more well-rounded individual. That is, you are better able to understand other people, their needs, their wants, their preferences, their influences, things that they value, etc. So with that in mind, so you go through a four-year degree, you have that signaling function to an employer. Now, when you have a concentration or major or specialization in school, that again has an additional signaling function. Not only have you gone through this program that's made you well-rounded, you actually have been introduced to a certain level of skill or ability in this program. So take studying accounting, for example, in the business school. Now, very few people, if anyone, would ever come out of a business school sufficiently proficient in accounting to actually do that for a living. Now, they need additional on-the-job training, generally under the supervision of another accountant. And if you're going to be a CPA, you actually have hour requirements, 1,000 or used to be 2,000 hours before you could get your certification as a public accountant or your CPA license. So with that in mind, there's an understanding that you need to work and acquire a level of practical skills. But if you're going to be hired into that position and you're going to be set up to continue to learn, the bachelor's degree in accounting has that signaling function that you have been exposed to all of these areas. And while you're not proficient, you at least have that knowledge to draw upon. So again, you can perfect those skills on the job and or at least improve those skills on the job to become proficient at it. So that's one, that hey, you're a well-rounded individual. Two, that you've been exposed to specific skills that are relevant to the employer. But three, there's another signaling function there. With it in mind, with the understanding in mind that you are going to learn the majority of what you do actually on the job force, that when you get a position you are going to learn to do that. Well, there are going to be things that you love to do and things that you hate to do. Now, an employer, when they're bringing you on, they know that you have paid money to spend anywhere from 3 to 5 years in an academic institution for a bachelor's degree. And during that time, you're able to prove yourself that you can take all of these mixed classes. Some of the classes, you may hate history and love English. You may hate both of those and love business classes, management classes, but hate the accounting classes, etc. So with that in mind, you undertook this 3 to 5 year experience and you performed well at it, as demonstrated by your grade point average. Okay. Now, some employers don't even look at grade point average. They simply want to see that you were successful and that you undertook the whole process and were successful at it. Okay. So in the job, they are going to give you things that you like to do, and you'll be engaged and you'll do well. They will also give you things that you do not like to do. Now, if you demonstrated well in school that you performed well on tests and classes that you hated or generally were not interested in, likewise, when you're given tasks or responsibilities in the job, you're also going to do those tasks or jobs well, simply because you have that level of motivation, that level of desire. So I caution you against to do what some students do and say, well, I don't even like those classes, I didn't try, but I do well in my major classes. Well, that's a very negative signaling function that if you don't try hard and do as well as you possibly can in those classes where you don't enjoy them or like them, the employer can assume when you're given tasks or jobs that you don't like, you're not going to be engaged, you're not going to do them very well, and quite frankly, you may be looking for the door. You may be looking for a different job that doesn't require you to do those. So again, a huge negative signaling function there. Okay, and lastly, so much emphasis now is placed on graduate education. That is, to go on for a master's degree or other professional degree, such as a law degree, that teaches you the skills to do a certain job or task, etc. This is extremely common in accounting and finance, and again, a law degree is mandatory to practice law, medicine, etc. But the importance that's now being placed on the graduate education, your performance in undergraduate is 50% or more sometimes of the consideration of whether you can get into business school or whether you can get into that graduate school. If you didn't prove yourself at the undergraduate level, still in some of those classes that have no relation to your master's degree in finance, that history class has nothing to do with your ability to run the capital asset pricing model. But nonetheless, it will affect your ability to get into business school. So again, your performance very early on becomes extremely important to your ability to get into graduate school, which oftentimes is the barrier, is the hurdle for you getting into the type of job or career function that you want to be in. Okay, so with that in mind, just to summarize again, so you have the signaling function of college, you have a technical track where you learn specific skills which can be extremely valuable in certain areas, but in other jobs, typically in general management roles, or when you're going to be managing other people and things like that, when you need to be well-rounded, the college education, the bachelor's degree, has that signaling function that you are well-rounded. It shows that you are exposed to a litany of different topics, and you have a concentration through your major in other topics. Part 3, it's a proof that you're dedicated to your work, to classes that you didn't like as well as the ones that you did like. And 4, it's a prerequisite and a huge factor as to whether you can get into a graduate program that may be necessary for you to start or be a part of the career path or track that you choose. So with that in mind, education is extremely important to personal and professional development, and it serves all of those functions that affect where you'll start and ultimately where you'll end up in life.